Community Mental Health of Ottawa County, CMHOC Board of Directors meeting.
Does have to go.
I'm well, how are you?
I know.
Oh, I thought that was a pink belt for a second.
It's one thing
two
we've never
tags.
done in the world
The camera does pan though.
to allow you to record stuff. and stuff.
That's on
They
camera.
never
Yeah,
do.
And
take the gavel
I'm just gonna make sure.
scares
that
people off.
Right.
You can officially send minutes out, do this, do that. Usually the board.
Looks like our official clock says it is 9 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome you all to the March meeting of Community Mental Health. As we call the meeting to order, I have a couple of administrative items to share with everyone. I don't know that we've ever announced it, but if you do have a cell phone, please silence it so that we're not interrupting the meeting. Another board on which I served, we had a rule that said if your phone went off during the meeting, you brought donuts to the next meeting. So we won't make that an official policy, but hopefully it will reinforce the importance. As we conduct our business, I would like to remind everybody that decorum and respect is what we value here at Community Mental Health, and we hope you would all abide by that. And then for the board members, I'd remind you, if you are unable to attend a meeting and would like an excused absence, let Michael or Amanda or me know, and we'll note that in the meeting. Our board bylaws do say that if you miss more than 3 unexcused meetings, there's a process for reconsidering your appointment. So hopefully no one is ever in that position. And then other items will be addressed. We have some new board members who were recently appointed this past week. And we have some board members who are going to be leaving. David Parnin, who's not here this morning. Oh, there he is. Okay. David has faithfully served on this board for about 8 years, and we certainly value his time of service and would like to recognize his retirement. Chris Kleingens has served now for about 2.5 years on this board. We certainly appreciate his contributions, and hopefully the two of you will still be available to work on ad hoc committees or provide input based on your many years of passion for the agency and for our mission. So with that, let's open with an invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gifts and abilities you've given each of the board members, the director of our agency, and the many critical staff members who faithfully serve. Give us joy as we reflect on that and try to contribute to meeting our mission. We're reminded of when Christ was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And help us to have that attitude of love to the people we serve in this community. And we ask your blessing on our meeting. Amen.
Amen.
Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You are no doubt familiar with our mission and vision statement, which is contained in the minutes, and I'll just ask you to occasionally reflect on that as a reminder. And we'll now open the floor for public comment. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your township residence.
Thank you for this opportunity. Hello and good morning. My name is Marguerite Rivera Berman, and I reside at 5050 Snowmass Lane in Allendale Township, Ottawa County. I'm pleased to stand today and represent Yvette Chiquito, principal owner and Vida Counseling and Wellness mental health professional, to thank the Ottawa County mental health community for their opportunity to submit and receive an award from the recent RFP 24-061 Mental Health Millage Grant. Our program, Nueva Tierra, which means new land, is designed to assist Latino youth and their families in the Holland, West Ottawa areas. Many of our families have experienced various disruptions and traumas which impede academic and social success. Through group sessions, we aim to provide a link between the school and family to aid and to assist the youth in learning and translating this information that they are learning at school about the mental health models into their families and the young adults that are present there as well. This will provide a safe place for these families to come and to ask questions and to consider and to comprehend the methods that their children are learning and to encourage them to use them in their homes. We believe doing this will empower our families to seek healthier choices, leading to more positive outcomes and hope-filled futures for all. Therapies such as DBT, trails, and trauma-focused cognitive behavior will be introduced to parents to help them learn about and implement simple tools that could provide a big impact for home and school, parents, and family members. Aspects of these methods will be translated into Spanish when necessary, as well as practically implemented to model the desired practice in order to promote these best outcomes. Another aspect of our program is that we seek to find for our families a way for them to become more active in lifestyle and also to increase and better their habits, their eating habits, and their lifestyle choices. So we have included within our program opportunities to advance those goals. With each group session and gathering, we will provide short teaching moments about healthy food and cooking to encourage that healthier lifestyle. Finding time and resources for our families to quote unquote just relax is really difficult to do. And so this grant will provide a chance for them to learn the importance of taking time for self and for family. We will be including art and dance lessons as part of those opportunities for them. Feeling at home in this new land can be off-putting. So we will design a Spanish version of Passport Holland, aimed at helping our families feel more comfortable and knowledgeable about the Holland area, its resources and activities. We are very excited to begin to work with Hope College and the Knickerbocker this fall in the hopes of encouraging our families to shop and frequent the downtown area by sponsoring a family night or a family movie day as well. And so again, on behalf of Yvette Chiquito, Vida Counseling and Wellness Nueva Tierra program, and myself, please accept our sincere thanks and appreciation for this wonderful award and the confidence and expectations that accompany it. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
did you want to proceed to the Recipient Rights Committee first or wait?
Oh.
Yeah.
You're right. We'll suspend the public comments until after the recipients' rights meeting, which we will now call to order. The first item on the agenda for that is to approve the agenda for this meeting. A suggested motion would be to approve our recipients' rights agenda.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign, motion carries. And then to review and approve the minutes of the last meeting of December 20th, 2024. Would someone like to make a motion? So moved. Support. All those, any discussion of the minutes? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Public comment on recipients' rights. If anyone has anything to speak to the recipients' rights hearing, please present yourself. No one on, oh, here's Rosalie.
Rosalie Austin, City of Holland. Previously, we've talked about expanding the Recipient Rights Committee to include more public because it's the board, and the board. That's the appeals committee. And I don't think that's fair. And recipient rights should be protecting the recipients, which it does not. It protects more of the system. And I'd like to see it opened up to be including more public, more people that will learn about it, to improve quality care. That it's been a long time coming, and over the years, people have had poor experiences, especially in facilities, that if it was used as a process quality improvement tool, we wouldn't have so many problems that go unaddressed, and it's common occurrences that repeat constantly. And I hate to bring up the news, but what's happening at Hawthorne, that's the state hospital has a different recipient rights committee. And then like Holland Hospital, a few months that got changed, they have their own. It's all internal investigation that I think needs to include more people than just internal people. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to comment about recipients' rights? Is there anyone online, Amanda?
He put his hand up.
Okay, then we will close public comments, and for new business, we have the recipients' rights report, which has been distributed to you. And we also have the policy review and training. And at that point, you want to make your presentation first and then go to the budget?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so in your packet, you have the quarterly report for December, January, and February related to complaints that were received, complaints that were closed out for those months. You will see that there were 2 complaints that were received in December, 6 received in January, and then there were 3 received in February. I also included the complaints that were closed out in those months. You'll see, for example, in December, complaint 3753, 3754, 3755. Those were all complaints, well, not all of them, but some of them were received prior to December, like for example, 3745. So that one was closed out, received in October, but closed out in December. So 63 days. So the recipient rights complaints need to be completed 90 days or less. And so the asterisks next to those indicate that status reports were sent at 30 days, 60 days, and all of the numbers in all the 3 respective months are prior to 90 days. So that is a good thing. So when the state comes in 2026 to review my reports, they will make sure that there weren't any or a pattern of reports being longer than 90 days. They also review reports to make sure they include all the elements, the right citations from the Michigan Mental Health Code, et cetera. So any questions about those complaints? Yes.
So I'm somewhat new to this specific process.
Sure.
Is there a threshold? Because I see that all of those were with contracted entities, right? Is there a threshold where we have X number of complaints and then suddenly a contractor becomes ineligible to work with the CMH? How does that work? Because I see there are some with the agency, but then many of them are.
Yep. Some of them are agency, so that would be within Community Mental Health of Ottawa County. Contractual, obviously, the hundreds of contracts that we have. I would say over the years, it probably has not ever resulted in a discontinuation of a contract, but it has resulted in termination of staff. And I know one program years and years ago fired everybody that they had on staff and started over because they themselves saw a systematic problem. And so they started fresh, but it could result in contractual action. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Especially if they didn't send us an approved and appropriate plan of correction that meets the law.
Thank you.
Add to that. Any one finding could lead to, the threshold could be 1.
Yeah.
depends on the severity of it. We do have a contract committee at CMH that reviews all of the contracts and the status of these. And if we feel that, I mean, offer this remedial action with the contract provider, we're working with them. Disciplinary action has to be taken. But to answer your question, the threshold could be one. It could be a substantial issue. And then we just say, sorry, we're terminating the contract. And a lot of times we have to ensure, I mean, obviously, if a recipient or a consumer is in danger, we'll immediately intervene and suspend activities with any provider, contractor, agency, and protect the recipient. But it's a good question of how many rights complaints are too many, or substantiated rights complaints is a better way to put it, before you just say, look, I don't know what's going on. I will tell you, when we had COVID, there was all kinds of issues because of staffing crisis. And so there was a lot of times where homes didn't have enough staff to adequately provide the service, which technically could meet a substantiated recipient rights complaint of neglect. And so we had to deal with that kind of reality. But the shorter answer is one could be the number, and we have a group that meets monthly to look at all contractual issues, including recipient rights complaints.
Thank you.
Yep, and there's a new provider scorecard coming out through the quality improvement unit. And one of the questions, or not one, but one section of that report card is related to recipient rights activities that they've had over the last year or couple years, which I think is great. So then going to the incident reports, still receiving between 200, 300, sometimes up to 400 incident reports. And those are different than complaints. Incident reports are documented incidents of maybe, somebody required emergency medical treatment. Someone had a behavioral incident that was unusual. It could have been, a trip and fall that somebody required first aid. Somebody was choking and they needed some, some thrusts or something like that to help get the food dislodged. So it could be anything unusual that happens in any program. So either internally, throughout our provider contractual agencies, and just anything anybody thinks needs to be documented, what the treatment team needs to see. So, some of the supervisors discourage writing of incident reports, where I encourage the writing of incident reports, because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And it's just a really good tool to get everybody informed and up to date on what's happening. Because, in an instance where somebody says, well, I think this person needs a behavior plan, we'll say, okay, well, what does the data look like that would require a restriction or limitation of that person's rights? Maybe access to the community, so freedom of movement. And if they go, oh, well, on this date, this date, this date, and this date, all of these things happened and we don't have any documentation, they're most likely not going to get that behavior plan until they start, showing us some real data instead of just some lip service. So incident reports are very, very useful. The incident reports get reported onto additional committees within community mental health. So it doesn't just stop at me, it goes through the quality improvement process. But I do read every single one of them and record how it needs to be recorded in a database. And hopefully with the transition to our new PCE system, maybe it'll be a little bit easier and more available for our staff to access them in the future in case they need to refer back. So incident reports, they're still coming in, which is a good thing. I don't view them as a bad thing. I like to see them. I like to see people documenting what's happening. And then your next section is just ongoing committees. It's just something I've had on here for years and years. So if you don't care to see that, I can take it off. But, I participate in a number of committees other than just this committee. And so it's a good representation, making sure people's rights aren't being infringed upon related to like behavior treatment. So like, limitation to personal property or, bells on doors and limited egress or access to the community, that type of thing. And then site reviews for the 2025 season has started. I included December on here because I did do one site visit in December after I left this meeting, actually. So I just started site reviews for 2025. I think my main month, I have over 20 of them in August, I think is my big site review month. So I try to limit myself to about 6, 7, or 8 a month because that's in addition to what I'm doing with complaints and committees, et cetera. But I still thoroughly enjoy going to the sites and seeing the providers and the individuals who are residing in those locations. It's pretty cool. And it's not always just the residential sites that I'm to. I'm visiting ABA sites and community living support sites and social rec sites. And it's just really cool to see what people are doing during the day outside of their home. So I just went to the clubhouse last week, and that's where I started. So that's kind of a fun site review for me to do. I went to the drop-in center, and it's kind of fun because you can walk in and I hate to, announce this, but some of the people I met 26 years ago in the clubhouse, I'll walk in and they're like, Brianna Fowler, how are you? And I'm like, yes, 26 years later, you still remember my name. And we get to have a cool conversation about what we used to do at the clubhouse. So I really enjoy the site visit portion of it. And then you'll see for trainings, I am doing in-person trainings up to 2 a month. I was sick this week, so we had to cancel, but it's really nice. We have that option of the Improving MI Practices online rights training. So Matt from the training center just directed all the people who were enrolled in my class to take that online course and submit their certificates for the day. So there's a backup if I'm not well, but usually I will go to the training no matter what. But so we're getting probably, between, sometimes we have 6 people in class up to 20 people in class, and it's fun. The bigger groups, we have great discussions. And so it's fun to see people again, face to face. And I think they really get a lot out of it versus just the online course. They can ask some questions and, in a neutral, safe zone. So it's been great. It's good to see staff. And then our 2025 recipient rights update came out, I believe, in February, and you'll see, that number will continue to increase, but we're close to having all of the CMH staff trained in their update training. So that's my goal by June or July when I present, that every CMH staff will have taken their update training.
Yeah, we did skip over your budget, which is attachment H, and that's an action item. If someone would like to suggest or make a motion to accept that budget.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Michael?
8 months ago, when I was put on as permit director, this board identified the need to provide additional support for the recipient rights department. This budget you're about to pass doesn't reflect increases in staffing related to that department yet. We're in the budget process with the county where we have to identify new positions for next fiscal year. And so I will be taking that under consideration and making recommendations on how we can increase the capacity of our one-person recipient rights department, and to further expand the rights committee to include community members, as so eloquently said in public comment, it's needed. So just understand to this board that I intend to examine how we can assist in increasing the capacity of the Rights Department, put it in the budget for next year, see the impact. And so we're in the middle of that process. The county has us identify new positions for next fiscal year, like now. And I'm like, I don't even know what revenue we're going to have. But, so I'm just letting the Recipient Rights Committee, which is the board, know that I have not forgotten that instruction from this group to come up with the plan to increase capacity so that we have more than one individual for our entire county rights department. So just wanted to add that as part of your discussion since you're at the budget.
Thank you. Any other comments about the proposed budget? If not, all those in favor of the motion to approve the budget, respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. And just as an anecdotal comment on that, we're all well aware that there is discussion at the state level for addressing the whole structure of recipients' rights, whether it be an adjunct of the local agency or whether it be under DHHS as a separate independent agency. There's an old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't believe our Recipients' Rights Department is broken. I believe it's doing a wonderful job of protecting our consumers, but that doesn't mean we can't improve it. And we applaud your efforts, Michael, to come up with ways to do a better job and provide some depth to the organization. Brianna, did you have any comments about the budget?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't budget myself, so. I have somebody else who budgets me, right? So, yeah, so Amy, she does, I mean, I have to go to training. That's required by the state. I have to have so many CEUs. That is in my budget. Yep, I would, you know, in the next 3 years or something, having another recipient rights person to train, because, I mean, my 32 years, my age 55 is coming up, so.
You're not going anywhere. Oh, anyway.
But it would be nice because it's a unique position. It takes a while to learn. I've been doing recipient rights for 19 years and I still go to sometimes quarterly recipient rights meetings with my fellow colleagues from across the state. And we're still bouncing ideas like, hey, I got this complaint. Is this the right code that I should be looking at, or should I be looking at this? And I've looked at these details. What else can I look at? And so it is unique. And sometimes you can feel alone because you are maybe the only one in your agency doing the job. But it would be nice to have another person to mentor that person because, you know, when the state comes in every 3 years, they're very particular in what they're looking for, and you need to have that full compliance and that attention to detail. So it would be nice. Yeah.
Thank you for your dedication.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other old business for recipients' rights? If not, we have another opportunity for public comment regarding recipients' rights, if anyone would like to speak to that.
I have just a question to Brianna. When I'm looking at these incident reports and that, what's the difference between neglect and abuse, 1 and 2? And
Sure. Yeah. So abuse would be anything physical, sexual, verbal. It could include exploitation. So physical is kind of what you do to that abuse, right? The abuse is what you do to someone.
right,
Incidents of neglect would be things that staff failed to do for someone. So neglect is usually something that is non-compliant with something written in, like a written guideline. It could be a policy, it could be a law. So pretty much in non-compliance with an individual plan of service. But what comes to mind is, we have a lot of individuals who have increased supervision. So maybe they have one-on-one supervision 16 hours out of 24 hours a day. And, or maybe it's 24 hours. And that staff, so if it's 24 hours, the staff is supposed to be one-on-one. And that might not be an arm's length. It could be literally closer, right? Depending on what the behavior plan says. We've had staff, oh, that person's sleeping. We're just going to sit in the living room, watch our show because it's 3 a.m. and they're not one-on-one with our person. And that person sneaks out the window because they dismantled their alarm because they're super smart. And now they're missing. That would be neglect.
Okay. My other question with it though is, you know, do you have length of days that you give yourself? Because I see none of them obviously are completed yet. You know, so from January where you've got these abuse and then what happens with that consumer in the meantime or?
Typically the staff is put on leave
Okay.
until I complete my investigation. So I've already done the interviews. I usually do the interviews within a few days, right? And then getting a complaint, especially about abuse and neglect. Maybe even the very next day, we're calling people in. I just haven't had time to write the report yet. So that staff either is still on leave, or if we kind of know what the outcome is going to be, they may have already terminated that employee's status.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Beth. Those are all good questions for us all to
Yep.
understand. Any other comments? If not, we will adjourn recipients' rights. Thank you very much.
Ooh.
And we will reconvene our board meeting. We were in the middle of public comments, so if anyone else has public comments for the CMH board meeting, please come forward and present them. And no one online for the board meeting? Okay. Then the next item here is consent items. I would like to make a couple of adjustments to the proposed agenda. We would like to change or swap items 7 and 8 and do the presentation first before the CEO's report. And then I would like to add item C, which would be to approve our CEO to appoint a recording secretary for the board. Amanda has been doing a great job doing that for us, but we don't believe we've ever officially empowered our CEO or asked our CEO to provide that administrative support. Her duties would include recording attendance, declaring a quorum, conducting roll call votes, record minutes for approval by the board and certification by the board secretary, post meeting notices as required, and such other items of support to the board as requested by the CEO. So to the extent that we can include that as a suggested motion under consent items, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. And then we will go to the presentation from our CIT team.
We're going to start getting back in the habit of having our wonderful programs come in and do presentations. I think that you'll find this is a very unique program. It's been in the newspaper, on the news, and very high heralded program. And I'd let Tim take over from here.
All right. Yeah, I haven't used this before. Can everyone hear me all right? So my name's Tim Piers. I supervise our crisis intervention team program. I also brought along Amanda Sheffield with me. She was one of our original clinicians, so I'd like to have her share a little bit later too. It's funny, I just wanted to mention, you put me in the middle of a crisis and I feel totally at home. You invite me to come up and speak in front of a group of people and I immediately start sweating, so please bear with me here. Based on national numbers, we know that more than 20,000 times every year, a 911 call comes into our county's dispatch center as a result of a behavioral health crisis. Since our program launched in 2021, our team of clinicians have been working in partnership with local law enforcement and other first responders to respond to these individuals and families in a new way. This is our crisis intervention team. So to date, we've graduated over 100 first responders from our week-long intensive training course. This training provides education on behavioral health topics, information on community resources, and skills-based training for crisis de-escalation. We also operate a co-response program, which provides in-person clinical intervention, as well as follow-up for post-crisis contacts. Our team has had over 3,000 contacts with individuals and families since we've begun the program, working together with our partners to keep the community safe, help with navigating the mental health system, and connecting people to the treatment and support that they need. Our program continues to evolve to better meet the growing need in our community. Until this year, clinicians were riding in police patrol cars, which limited the areas of the community they could respond to, and sometimes prevented us from providing clinical intervention where it was needed. This winter, local community foundations stepped up and awarded us funds for 2 dedicated response vehicles that will allow our clinicians to offer timely and county-wide intervention for all 911 calls that our team is dispatched to. This is exciting, cutting-edge work. From the beginning, we have learned a lot from other CIT programs around the state and collected best practices to inform our program in Ottawa. We have continued to look for new ways to support wellness in our community. More recently, our team at the Holland Police Department is doing regular outreach to the homeless community in the city of Holland. The team with the Sheriff's Office has worked to establish emergency pantries around the county for responders to access 24 hours a day when they encounter an individual or family with an immediate need for food or clothing or other basic items. The staff on this team, I just want to say, are incredible, and frankly, they have to be. Our work bridges the mental health system and the emergency services system. Providing behavioral health care alongside police, fire, and EMS requires a unique skill set. Our clinicians don't always know what they're walking into, just like our partners in public safety. These clinicians have to be highly skilled and adaptable to do this work well. I've also had to provide these clinicians with bulletproof vests just in case, which is very unusual for some of the other staff I work with. And all of these intricacies make these positions challenging to hire for. The impact we're having in the community, though, is staggering. We show up to what is often someone's worst day. A community member is in crisis and they don't know where to turn. In desperation, someone calls 911 and our team is able to be there, providing the kind of compassionate care and expertise that all of us would want for ourselves or a loved one in a similar situation. When we respond, community members know that help is available and they don't have to find the answers on their own. They will have a plan to keep themselves safe and any assistance they need in accessing the care to be well. Now I'd like to invite Amanda to share a little bit from her perspective.
Thank you for having me. My name is Amanda Sheffield. I was, as Tim said, one of the original clinicians on the CIT team. I co-responded with our Deputy Sampson from the Sheriff's Department. I guess from my perspective, I want you all to know how important it is for those clinicians to be out there doing this work. We have spent a lot of time with our community members in crisis. We have been able to, by being able to spend that time, we have been able to connect people to resources they might not have known about or might not have had access to. We go on calls where people don't have telephones, they don't have utilities, maybe they don't have access to food or clothing. We also work with a homeless population, which Tim kind of talked about our outreach. Early on, one of the things that we really wanted to tackle was those who maybe utilized 911 a lot in an effort to get some needs met. So we were charged with trying to meet with those people in their homes, figure out what was going on. And we were able to do that in many cases. As an example, we had a gentleman who was calling 911 quite frequently. I think it was in the 10s or 20s in a month. We ended up, myself and another clinician went to his home, sat down at his table, and just kind of talked about what are your needs, what's going on here. And we learned that there was a lot of medical needs that were not being met in that case. So luckily, through some time, some conversation, we were able to connect him with some medical resources, but we also provided him that listening ear so he could just tell someone what's going on and know that someone wanted to help him. So I can report that successfully after that interaction, he did not call 911 again for at least the next several months. I'm not sure after that, but I'm going to assume that he did not. Some other things we've been able to do are connect people with resources such as Meal on Wheels, adult or child protective services if necessary, our emergency pantries that Tim talked about. We've really created a lot of great community partnerships, which has also been really great. So I give these examples just to say it's important work that we're doing. As Tim said, it is difficult to do this work as a clinician. You are, again, you don't know what you're walking into. You are coming into someone's home or their space when they are having a terrible, terrible day. So we do need specially trained people and people who are willing to do that work. So I thank you for your time and to be able to speak on my clinician's behalf. And I thank Tim for allowing me to come and speak as well. Thank you.
Any questions for our folks?
I'm curious, do you have a breakdown of the ages of the individuals that you're seeing are in need?
Yeah. We are tracking some of that information. I don't have those numbers on hand, but I could get them to you. I think anecdotally, what's been a bit of a surprise to us is particularly the number of older folks that we've been seeing. So,
Yeah, I would say that is data that we are working on collecting. In my experience through the nearly 2 years that I was doing co-response, it definitely varied, but we were seeing a lot in the elderly community. We did see some juveniles, minors, families. We also deal with the veteran population. We would get veteran calls as well.
Okay. Does it seem kind of evenly spread out then? Nothing really, no particular group stands out hugely or?
For just strictly from my perspective, no, I don't think any one group probably sticks out. I think sometimes your access to the resources might look different depending on who you're trying to assist.
Okay.
I think I'll add on to that one of the things we've noticed is just how many of the folks we serve have kind of intersecting issues, right? Like not only maybe a behavioral health concern, but some kind of resource need, or connecting people to food pantries and things like that. And I think seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, I would say mental health, when we talk about behavioral health issues and mental health, that, holistically, that's a whole person there, right? So you're talking about medical needs. You might be talking about, lack of food or tangible resources. They may also have that behavioral health component that might be not being served, or they are being served, but there's something else that's needed.
Okay.
What kind of continuity do you have with Sheriff's Department in terms of their personnel as it relates to your developing a teamwork approach?
Yeah, so both the Sheriff's Office and the Holland Police Department, since the launch of our program, dedicated a full-time officer to the program. And that has just been huge for collaborating and,
Right.
continuing the work together.
Have those members been the same members throughout since 2021?
One of them has, our Holland officer changed.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Is everybody on your crisis intervention team trained in CIT? So do they do like a rotation amongst staff? Some, the middle of the night call, is somebody on call for that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we're still in the process of developing the program. So far, we're just available during the day shift, unfortunately, because we know that crisis occurs all times of day and night. But yeah, we have 3 full-time master's clinicians who are all highly trained. They've been through the same CIT training that we offer to first responders, and we hope one day to make that available around the clock.
I just was kind of curious. Thank you, first of all, so much. I can imagine how hard that is. I'm kind of curious with some of so I deal with a lot of people with autism, and that's a huge spectrum. So in that space, I can imagine, the mental health crisis, but then people with autism also have a very unique way to go into that. So are the people on your team specifically aware and trained in that autism spectrum disorder?
Yeah. So that is a big piece of the training that we offer. And then more recently, in the last few years, we've partnered with an organization called Carter Kits that actually makes some additional training and resources available for first responders and those of us doing this work. So, yeah.
I live with a son with autism, and I know when you go into fight or flight, it can be pretty hard to get them off that space and just take some unique conversations. So just kind of curious what that looked like.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the great unique things about CIT is our ability to take some time to slow things down. First responders are there to do a job. They have to usually work pretty quickly. So we're in a unique position to be able to take that time. So if it does take some time to de-escalate a situation or to, create some trust so that we're able to make that space safer for that person to have a conversation, that is really helpful. And yeah, the Carter Kits training is provided to all of our clinicians as well as their own personalized training that they might have had or would request during their time on CIT.
If I could follow up on that a minute, I had a question here. We have a number of folks on the IDD side of our service umbrella who may have coexisting conditions with behavioral health. Do you provide services for training for our specialized residential providers or for parents who may be caring for someone in that situation?
Yeah, so far we have not been providing training like that, but we're continuing to grow the program and make more of those kinds of opportunities to a broader audience.
Great.
I'm wondering what is the timeframe of getting another team available for second shift? I'm just thinking about how kids come home from school and just, I would think that those hours might be more needed for families.
Yeah,
Are we
so-
seeing a need?
So actually, the CIT program, and Tim specifically, we're really looking at centralizing our whole mobile crisis response organizationally wide. They're one part of that for a very specific group.
Okay.
We're actually in the process of centralizing all crisis services under one directorship and developing a strategic plan so that we have coverage around the clock. If you remember, our CCBHC funding requires that we have 24-hour mobile crisis, and we have to stand it up. So we're actually in the process now, I say we, but it's really Anna and the staff, of putting together that strategy, and we hope to bring that in April or May for you to look at. But the goal is 24-hour coverage for any recipient in Ottawa County that's in a crisis. Now, in relation to specialized residential services, I will tell you, a lot of the staff there are very well trained. The issue isn't necessarily training, it's what to do with folks when there's no psychiatric hospitals or crisis residential programs or other settings if someone needs to have a temporary respite from their home. And that's a structural piece that we have to work on as a system that I'm trying to address as well. Simply put, in a crisis, unless the staff at the home can de-escalate it or us can go there and de-escalate it, there's not much to do besides have them sit in the ER for 25,000 hours and waiting for a bed that doesn't exist. So step one, stand up and have mobile crisis 24/7. Step two, keep pushing for the development of crisis stabilization units outside of a home for that population, which there really isn't any, to be honest.
Any other questions? Thank you for your great presentation.
Thank you.
And now our CEO's report.
Yes, we have several items to discuss. I'm going to be as succinct as possible. Just have to get a copy of the agenda, which one I'm doing first here. Wrong one. I just need a front page of our agenda because I think we have certain reports that I have to go over. Yeah, but do you have a face sheet of the, you'll find that. Thank you. Before I get in, there's a couple of basic reports I want to go over. And then I'll give my usual director's report on a variety of issues. We are required every year to submit an annual needs assessment to the Department of Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. In your packet, there is the data set related to that. Our staff, Amy Avery, does a wonderful job pulling this information together. And I'll go through that, but some general comments. It is my belief that this needs report, as required by the state, does not actually identify the true needs of Ottawa County or any county on how to improve or the service needs in a county. This annual report that we're required to send, you will see, will capture demographic data and how many people you served and you called, and from screening to assessment. And as you already know, I'm in a process, and I showed you once before, a new dashboard that looks at that monthly. You can look at all of this data in real time. Some of the questions like Sylvia was asking, who we're serving and what's really kind of like, what are kind of the demographics and the populations will be. So this report is something we're required to bring to you and then send to the state. The history of this report was developed long ago in a time where the system was funded by general fund, state general fund dollars primarily. And it was the main way the state understood what the unique needs of each county were. And I know Dave Parnham remembers those days. And you would submit that and that would help shape your budget because it was primarily general fund. Since we've moved to Medicaid, this has turned into a demographic report that I will tell you has little to no utility. So what I'm going to do, since it's my 8th month, but for next year, we're going to have a revised version of this report that, yes, will meet the standards the state wants, how many people called and all that. But I actually intend to conduct and use other needs assessments we've had in the past to offer a true needs assessment to send to the department on an annual basis that really reflects what we really need, like more funding or more programs focused on CIT, these things. So when you go through the data, if you could hit the slide, you get the chance of trying to like type and hit the thing. It looks at a data needs a submission of requests for services, waiting list, priority needs, and then it asks you to gather some demographic data on the county. So you can hit the next slide. You might have to, if there's a button I can press, I could probably, oh, it's all right. So the first one's request for services and disposition and requests. Go ahead and hit it. Looking at the amount of people that have, by age group, that have requested service and what has happened to them. And what you get in this format is a table format, and then you get a line graph on the next page, I believe, that kind of shows you those things. And really, by no surprise, we're going to average far more people calling us versus people that actually end up being assessed and entered into service. The new dashboard, well, the dashboard we've revised is not new, that I've been showing in previous months, does this on a monthly basis. And you'll see that every month. And if you've been part of the county commissioners, when I go to policy and planning, and when I've done, I bring those statistics every month and you'll get them. So you'll get a version of this every single month that pretty much shows who called, of them, who were screened for assessment, who were assessed, and what we got in, and from what population group. So these slides from initial contact to serve are supposed to go down, because we'll get a lot of calls like, no, you don't need a chiropractor, or no, that's not us, that's somebody else, right? But we log those in the data. So it's not concerning to me that you'll have a drop in numbers from initial contacts to served, because it's illustrating every step of the screening process, from phone call to screening to assessment. And the numbers can range, you know, by population groups to thousands of people calling and end up at hundreds there. So why is this report not helpful? Well, Michael, is this drop statistically significant? Dr. Brashears, should we see a higher percentage of people that call to get in? What are the national benchmarks in all of these things? So I intend to incorporate thresholds and other things and other explanations into this report to the state, because right now, I'm being critical because my staff work hours on this with absolutely no feedback from the state when we submit it. We send it into cyberspace. So I don't want you to kind of look at this report and start to drill down in a comprehensive way when we're just filling in fields at this point that don't tell an accurate story, and I'm going to change that. You can go to the next slide. Hey, data trends through the years. Say it again. We have a lot of these pictures. Okay, total number of individuals scheduled for an assessment. What's interesting, in some of the COVID years, it goes up. Right after COVID, it goes up, right? And it's about relatively the same. This number I didn't run myself. There's no statistical difference in the numbers. It's by chance alone that you have differences. There are no trending data that would meet any litmus test of statistical analysis to say, is it a big deal to go from 1,100 to 979? It's virtually the same number from a statistical standpoint. So it's showing we're staying relatively steady, even though we're having more assessments pop up. That does mean more time for our folks. And you can see that as soon as you get past the health emergency, assessments increase. But that's okay. But when you look at that line, it's hard to tell the story until you get to the next one. So you were already ahead of me. Where the bottom lines are DD population, right? And then the other ones are the various ones I can't read from here, adult MI, and then children, right? What's missing is substance use disorders in the same kind of graph line. The data elements for that whole thing are different, and they're not on this report. So the whole thing ignores substance use disorders completely, which is like comorbidity for that, as with all the groups. But you can see in the DD population, it's not totally flat, but it's pretty much flat, the numbers of people that are assessed. And that's not who make it in, that's just assessed by population. And you can see some of the spikes and changes in that. But we hope to provide this board with more comprehensive data, and we already have that in our own dashboard that we've been working on, to answer questions every month of how many people called, how many were screened, how many got in, because often you hear as board members, no one gets into CMH. I will tell you that more than 87% of people that get screened get in, and the DD population is 95%. And so you'll start seeing in my director's report just a breakout of this type of number every month. And you'll have access to a link at any time you can click, and we're doing this in real time. And this will be made available to the public as soon as I can work out all the bugs of that. So anybody at any time in our community can click on it and go, oh, last month they had 32 assessments and 95% got in. It also gives us a chance to check the data. So when I get phone calls from the family and they're like, well, you said 0, but I know for a fact we didn't get in. And so we have a quality check. It's not like Ottawa County has a comprehensive quality improvement program in terms of the number of staff to work on this. We have a limited number of people are doing this, and they're doing a good job getting it to the standards that we want. But I didn't find a lot of value of trying to drill down specifically into these numbers since I'm already generating them in a different way monthly for you to see. But just to simply say to you, these are required elements that we have to report to the state. And, you know, to my knowledge, we never get a feedback back like, oh, that's different, or, oh, I don't know where it goes, to be honest with you. Can you hit the next one? So keep going. So there's some data, county statistics we just get from various sources that you can see that may or may not have an impact on community mental health, but they are the social determinants of care that impact us, variables that impact us. The number of residents, unemployment rate, students graduate from high school. You can see we're actually asked to give the state this data. And I can think of other statistics I'd rather send to them in addition to these that tell the whole story of a needs assessment. But the logic was based on some county statistics, could you guess what you might need? Well, we already know that from other reports in the county that we utilize. Access to mental health, transportation, and housing are the top three. But yet we're not asked to produce any of that. So what I'm going to end up doing in the future is send this report to the state, but have an attachment that both the Board of Commissioners and the CMH board see as part of our annual needs assessment. Because we're really not developing a strategic plan based on that, based on this report at all. So I have to show it to you, but at the moment has very little utility. And I acknowledge that, and we will beef it up. Next slide, and then I'll answer questions on this one.
Ask
Yeah.
a question, Michael. This is, that last slide was a good example. 345 special ed students graduated or aged out in 2024. How many of them did we have a transition plan in place?
Correct.
How many of them are now receiving, requesting services from the CMH agency?
Correct.
That's
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there has to be relevant. What's the impact of community mental health based on these statistics? How do we, like, I read this and I'm a statistician at heart and in training in addition to psychology. And I go, so what? The unemployment rate's 2.9%. And what's our supportive employment program like at CMH in relation to that? Are our folks considered unemployed? Right. So we have to take this data and we have to actually create a context and a utility for it. But we will continue to send in the required reports to the state. But we have to find a way to make them useful. We have so many community organizations that are collecting data and we utilize them from various departments. But we need to aggregate them all together for an official community mental health needs assessment. It's also a requirement by law that the Board of Commissioners see that for every CMH, by the way, in the state, not just a county department CMH. But I don't know if you've been on the county commission long, you might get a needs assessment, but not in a comprehensive way. You will next year. So next slide. So it gets into consumer health data, how many people have a primary health physician, percentage of people or number of people that were at risk for severe emotional disturbance. Severe emotional disturbance is a term used in mental health to avoid using diagnostic DSM diagnoses like conduct disorder or ADHD. So we come up with this comprehensive definition of severe and emotional disturbance. And to me, it's people that need mental health treatment and have significant dysfunctions in many areas of functioning. And how many of these people are below the poverty level? And so when you look at these numbers, what I don't have for you, what we need is and. So as my CEO, Anna, told me, we have to show the CMH board, but we're like, we have to do better at taking this information and saying, now what? How does this relate to programming request needs, or is it relevant at all? And I intend to do that over the next year with this report. Next slide, please. So, I mean, I kind of like, dear board, this report stinks. Here it is. Do you have questions? And you guys are like, well, we'll wait for the next one, I guess. But just know that all of the data elements you saw in that report are now going to be available monthly to see in real time amount of people served, which departments, screenings versus assessments. And I provided a link in one of the other board packets, but you'll get it via email again. And then once we have it perfected, we'll open it up for the public on our website to collect on any time, any month for the month before. How many people called us? What happened to them? Were they accepted into services? Which population groups? So we can have this data available all the time, and we're getting closer on doing that. The next report is our MIMBUS indicators. And I should let you know that one of our new board members, Paul Duff, is probably an expert on these indicators more than anybody else. I would, maybe in the state, I don't know. He's been working with these indicators as part of different CMH systems since they were developed. Now, the indicators that you're looking at are slated to go away, and we're not necessarily sure what they're going to be replaced with. We got some ideas. But I like these indicators because they are a distinctive difference between us and the private system. No private mental health system has to ensure that we see people within 14 days of being screened or do a psychosocial assessment between 14 days once they're authorized, or start services within 14 days of once we say, yes, you're in. Or these indicators are looking at if somebody's in a hospital, we have to see them within 7 days of discharge. And I know that Robert Davis asked about that a couple board meetings ago, and these are the indicators that we use, Robert, to keep us on track. Inpatient recidivism rate, you want to have less than 15% of the people that go into the hospital go back in within 30 days. That's what it's looking at. The private sector does not have any of these measures. You can call up and it's like, I can get you in 3 months, right? So we have so there are thresholds, what you're expected to do. And you can see that in the target range. It's usually 95%, but some of the targets are lower, like 62% of getting a biopsychosocial assessment within 14 days once they're in. And it's because people reschedule. These standards have gotten more strict. Before, and when I used to work with Paul Duff way back in the day at Lansing, we would talk about the exceptions to this report because it was his job to come to me and say, you're not doing it right. He probably will still do that when he's on the board. But my point is, it's gotten more stringent, the criteria. There's no exceptions. You either did it or you didn't. It isn't, well, mom called and canceled and rescheduled, or this happened that day. The standards now are either happen or it didn't happen, no exceptions. So I don't like red in any report, but it gives us areas of strengthening and determining, do we have the capacity to deliver services within 14 days, deliver that assessment. So this is a good tool for us to look at our own system and look at productivity standards and capacity issues. As you know, our caseload size are very high. It's very difficult to kind of meet these standards, but we're trying tremendously. And so we have a group that looks at this every month, and we come up with action plans for each one of the red items on there. But if you have questions of like what some of these mean, I'm happy to answer them. The first indicator one is you have to screen somebody and come up with a disposition of what's going to happen for emergency. This is for like hospitalization or crisis within 3 hours. So if somebody walks into Holland Hospital, somewhere else or us, we have 3 hours to determine what's going to happen because we have to authorize and provide crisis stabilization services and inpatient services. Nobody else is held to that standard besides the public system. We have to do it in 3 hours. So that doesn't mean people are out of the ER in 3 hours. It means we've made a decision. A lot of times we're waiting for a bed to open up, or psychiatric bed or service. That's what we're trying to do there. 3 hours, 95% of the time, and we're doing it consistently. The next one is you have to do an assessment within 14 days of when somebody's accepted in, like how to look at their overall needs. And that one gets difficult because of scheduling and people changing. But by and large, we've had some months like October to December, woo, we met the threshold. But we're constantly looking at that. And then once an assessment's done, you have to start actual treatment within 14 days. So when you're looking at autism services, and that's that DDC column at 62%, it's very difficult to get people from assessment for autism to an actual ABA provider.
Mhm.
And you're going to notice in your huge contract list today, all these adjustments to the autism, that's why there was a bulk of them on the, for a state mandated increase in the rate of over $60 an hour for ABA providers to help with increasing that pool that directly impacts the statistic. By the way, they send us revenue for that, but not enough. We're calculating what we really need. But that's what that red area is really addressing. So these MIMBUS indicators are helpful as like system process measures. They don't tell effectiveness of care, but just the process of care. Questions on these?
If I could characterize your first group of data that you report to the state, that's quantitative data. This is more qualitative.
Sure.
But your last comment, it doesn't talk about the effectiveness of the services that we provide.
Right.
And we've talked about this over the years. We never ask, did we make your life better?
Right.
And if you could come up with a way to try to integrate that determination in measuring the effectiveness, are we?
Yeah.
We could do all these things
So
and still not make people.
we look at, we have satisfaction data, tells part of the story, but we're actually in the process of creating a quality of life measure. There's some out there that are very robust and many questions. We're developing a 10 to 12 question quality of life measure that could be applied to every service that we do. Has your life gotten better in several domains as a result of the service? Do you have more hope for the future? Things like that. Symptom reduction is a main part of looking at effectiveness, but only the reduction of mental health symptoms only tells 1/4 of the story. Has your life changed? Are you using crisis services less? Things like that. We have other indicators that we can put together for a more comprehensive impact analysis of how we do. This at a minimum says, are you at least getting people in and going, and how do you address a crisis? And even though it's incomplete, we're the only system that's asked to do this. I find that interesting. So if when I'm a private clinician with my psychology shingle out there, I'm never asked to tell the insurance company, did I do this? In fact, I hope I don't see the person. So I think these measures are helpful, and I know we're in the process of revision at the state revising them, but they've been helpful to at least capture process effectiveness.
How are we stacking up with this in comparison to other counties? Is that data out there?
We can get an analysis of that. There is a report that looks at both how our region does and specific CMHs, which I can produce. Yeah, I just don't have it offhand, but we can see where we are by ranking out of the 10 regions. We like to be number one, but we can do that, and I will provide that.
Michael, if I'm a parent of a seriously emotionally disturbed child, and they have been seen by this agency and assessed to meet criteria for service, and I look at the sheet, and it says 74 people have been assessed, and yet we know we don't have a waiting list, but
Right.
they're on a waiting list. I would think this report, if I'm a parent out there, and I'm thinking, what in the heck is this county doing with these
Yeah.
kids?
So the other dashboard we have actually solves that problem. The actual dashboard we have, which I'll bring in April too, will show you of those assessed by population group, how many people started service and when. And that's going to it really is the counterbalance to that report, because that only tells, like Harvey used to say, part of the story, right? The rest of the story needs to be presented in an impact statement so that we can answer that. Because we often hear,
Yeah,
I don't get in, or this happened. I'm like, okay, well, how do I know that?
yeah.
And I've spent months saying, and Anna will tell you, how many people we actually served. And she's convinced me several ways we look at it differently. But it's to get at that. That's why that initial report I showed you is really inadequate.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, to me, it's a bureaucratic exercise at this point. It has no utility.
Right.
We don't ever hear anything back. You think the state would go, oh my God, what's going on?
Right.
Crickets. Now, do I want them to call me? Probably not.
Does anybody even read it
Right,
at the state?
yeah.
Well, it would be helpful too to know like how many individuals are in each category, because some of them, where it says
Right.
like 33.3%,
Yeah.
was that 3 people?
Right.
So did one case, skew the number? Sometimes it doesn't take
Yeah,
much.
and then the dashboard we have, which I'll send the link again, it does that too. It says number, the N matters, because if you're at 20%, but there was only like 5 people and 2 of them, so the N does matter in calculating percentages. And we just didn't put that on this report, but we have it. So you can see there were 8 people assessed, and of that, 7 of them started services. 1 didn't, and here's what happened to them. We even have the disposition of what happens to people that we say you're not in. Where did they go? What type of place were they referred to? Were they a no-show for the appointment? So I show you this report, and if I was thinking, I would just hit the link and kind of show you the other one. But I'll bring that in April, because you're going to see it like every month will be, you'll see the 4 or 5 screenshots of those. And so you'll be able to know without clicking on the link those. We had to develop it. And we hired somebody new in our I'm calling it informatics, but our IT quality department, Olivia Martin, who's just been a whiz. Like, all right, what do you want? And she comes back and, these really young, wicked, smart kids, they come in, "Hey, this is what you want?" Yeah, right. I'm still at analog email and they're like quantum physics. So we're getting a lot better at this. And remember, we're also implementing a new electronic medical record system. So I got to doing a lot at the moment to answer the question, can we prove what we do actually works? That's the question I want to know. Does it matter? So these reports are kind of things that we need to show you. But more to come, better improvement on them. I have a couple of other items in my director's report, unless there are other questions related to this. Okay, in your packet, you'll notice a huge amount of contracts this time. You have contracts that require amendments, which we'll talk about later. The majority of those are a result of a mandatory rate increase for autism providers that provide ABA. And you may see more next month, because can we actually do that? And so I'm not going to have you turn to the contact page. I just want to provide some context when we get there. That's what that is when it says, mandatory Lakeshore rate increase. We had to bring every single one of those back to you. And once we get the finance committee, subcommittee stood up, this would be the exact type of things we'd address there. So we could bring it to you in a consent agenda. And you would know that a portion of this committee would know this already. So I'm serving 2 functions right now. Give you an explanation. So if you had sticker shock looking at all that, we did receive additional revenue. We're still calculating if it's enough to cover these increases. We won't know until we have real experience. But the bulk of the amendments in your contract piece is that. The other new ones, there was a whole bunch of new contracts. These are the results of the millage awards that we just gave out. You heard one person this morning, which I talked about last board session in the last packet. I kind of do those. So these are just the contracts to execute that. And I'll talk about that when we get there. Because we had been going 2 months where those pages were like 2 here and 4 there. And then we went to like 15 and 20. That does not reflect a dramatic increase in Medicaid spending. In fact, just the autism side, that's it. We're still watching our contractual and new contract expansions for all of our services, but for Medicaid as part of our Medicaid deficit reduction strategy. So I wanted to give you some context of those. So when we get to those contracts, I can kind of talk to more about that you're like, oh, okay, there's a lot this time. Amendments because of a rate change we had to pass through. And then the RFPs, contracts for our new millage. So just a heads up on that, what those are about. As you know, the state has sent out a memo to once again restructure the PHP, or the regional entity system, which manages our Medicaid. Again, right now, if you remember, we have 10 of these regions. We're part of Region 3, the Lakeshore Regional Entity. We have 5 partners, CMHs, that form that. And the state is going to release a request for proposals to take over the Medicaid management of those. We'll have to wait to see what's in it before we can react to it. So even though I've sent out stuff from the department to you as board about advocacy strategies, it's kind of like the advocacy strategy is don't change the system or something really bad happens. So contacting legislators and things related to that piece without knowing the details is just telling them we're about to drown. I go, well, let me know when you know what to do. So the advocacy of dealing with that system being changed, we're looking at stuff among CMHs, among the 10 regions of, working with the department, getting legal advice on it. But we really can't respond to it until we know what they're intending to do. And I will tell you, there's a timeline. They have to get this request to change the system out before 9/30 of this year, September 30th. Or they have to wait till the next fiscal year. And a lot of these people are going to be out of office in 2 years. Right? They're part of the governor's staff, and they may be reappointed, they may not. And once you change the system, you have to give a year transition time. So say the Lakeshore Regional Entity is no longer our Medicaid kind of manager that we're in partner with. They have to have a year of transition before it goes to somewhere. So unless they get this done pretty quickly, they're going to run out of time unless the next administration wants to do this. We're obviously opposed for privatizing the system. We've been told that that's not the intent, but I don't believe anything until I read it. There was a survey that was sent out. I also sent out asking the citizens on their feedback on the current management system called PHPs. Well, first you have to know what the heck they are, their role and function. So if you're a person trying to fill that out, you're like, I don't know, what is it? So much so they had to attach a document, what is a PHP? And then answer the survey. And then the second half of the survey had nothing to do with like the system and how it's managed. It was like, are you happy with your services type of deal? It's my belief that the state intends to make a change to the system. Specifically what? I'm not sure. But I am going to keep my eye on the ball and keep sending out regular updates like I've been doing when things come up. I even held a meeting, it was the last Friday, the Friday before, they're all getting blurred together, on come ask questions about Medicaid and Medicaid spending. And so I'll intend to have another one of those sessions probably in April. Like, here's what we know with Medicaid on the federal level. There were changes, there weren't changes. Here's how I think it impacts it. So when I have enough information, I'll keep educating the board and keep offering opportunities for the community to come. And yes, Rosalie, I'll make it live stream next time. So, I mean, there's a lot to talk about on that front. I'm keeping my eye on the ball for services here. I was able to testify at the subcommittee of the Behavioral Health and Medicaid Subcommittee. I've sent that out. I think I made my point on that there is money in the system we talked about last time that needs to be pushed out. What I'm trying to figure out is there actually money still there, or did they reallocate it somewhere? And we're trying to figure that out with that subcommittee. Where's the money? If we simply get the money that was promised to the CMH system pushed out to the system, we'd be able to balance our Medicaid deficits throughout the state. We have a projected Medicaid deficit at the moment for about $1 million. You'll look in our position today. It's fluctuating. We ended last year with like $4.5 million, right? So we're making some progress, but there are a lot of variables that are moving that I know Amy will talk about as well. What I would say to this board is it's my fundamental belief that we do not receive enough Medicaid to meet our requirements. I am putting together a formal report and letter to the Lakeshore Regional Entity outlining this. They're aware of this. I intend to give it to you in April and go to the LRE board, Lakeshore Regional Entity Board, in April, showing them our true Medicaid need to provide the services we know are coming. We know we're going to have anticipated, not unanticipated, anticipated increases in specialized residential CLS autism services. We know that. Once we know that, we have an obligation to inform the region of that. And I went through last board meeting, kind of our rate structure stuff we're looking at, and I intend to keep moving forward on that. My goal is to get the region and the state to understand our specific numerical need. I've called for the region to have all members do the same thing and us present a comprehensive report to the state within 60 days of what do we think we need in this region for the rest of this fiscal year and moving forward. If our regional partners, other CMHs don't want to do it, I will go it alone with the region and anybody else I can get. The citizens of Ottawa County are not getting enough Medicaid revenue to meet the demand that we have. And I'm going to keep pointing that out to the staff at CMH and our partners. I'm acutely aware of the impact of the lack of funding it's having to you. For the CMH staff, keep your eye on your ball. You're doing wonderful every day. And just a reminder, we do not receive any new money for new people coming in. In fact, I made this statement at the the House committee, that I never really had conceptualized in this way until I went there. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm shocked. The state of Michigan assumes that 94% of people on Medicaid won't seek services. So even though we get a small payment, a very small payment, per member per month, every Medicaid enrollee to fund our system, the budget principles itself assumes that 96% of them won't, 94% of them won't show up. They're only expecting 6 to 8% of Medicaid recipients to seek services. Well, that's 90% of our funding. So if 7% show up, oh my God. If 8%, oh my goodness. There is no incentive besides us keeping our mission of finding anybody new to serve. And that is backwards. So the advocacy that I'm pushing for is have the budget match published mental health prevalence rates for disorders and things we serve. So if the prevalence rate is 22% for schizophrenia, let's say it is, the funding needs to get closer to that versus 6% or 4%. If the autism is 1 in whatever it is, then the mental health funding needs to reflect that. You have to assume the Medicaid population has the same prevalence rates, if not higher, than the general public. So my advocacy stance is push the money that they already owe us, keep your obligations, give us the money to meet the obligations, and to have Medicaid budgets based on published, normed prevalence rates for DD, substance abuse, and mental health. By the way, the budget assumes the Medicaid that hardly anybody that's not on Medicaid will show up either. If we didn't have the mental health millage, there'd be really no services whatsoever for anybody else besides a Medicaid recipient beyond crisis services and hospitalization. There would be nothing, no mental health treatment. If we didn't have the millage and our partners in this community, community mental health would have to change its name to Medicaid Priority Whatever Health of Ottawa County. That's not what we're here for. You've heard me say this before, it's the same theme. In April, we're going to have an organizational meeting. You'll do new officers on this board. I intend in April to also give you the schematic of our strategic planning process that I'd like the board with the county to engage in. We will do it ourselves. We won't need to bring in a contract agency to do our strategic plan. We'll do it ourselves. We have the capability. And we'll outline a plan that will take us to 2030. We need a 5-year strategic plan. It's my belief the landscape's going to change significantly, and I want to be prepared. So in April, you'll get a schematic and the structure of how I'd like to proceed with that for your consideration. I'll take questions on anything in my report.
I've been going to Michael's forums on Fridays, and those are really, really helpful. So I appreciate you taking the extra time to do that. Went to the Medicaid one, I guess 3 of them. So
Yeah.
thank you. I know it's a lot of extra work, but I encourage anybody, even board, to go, because I've been on this board now for 2 years, and every month I'm like, what?
Right. What is
I
that?
don't understand. So I would really encourage you to go and listen to what he has put together each time. Thanks.
And we will get them in video format once I have time to sit down and re-record them.
Yeah.
I can't record them during them because people ask me questions that have nothing related. So I'd have to like edit the whole thing out so that people are not watching for 2 hours and me doing my, you know me, I talk a lot. So I'm trying to get them down to kind of bite, almost like TikTok bites. And the county has a new process to help with that, which I intend to use, you know, to develop those video recordings.
Michael, I do have a question. when you're talking about the organizational meeting next month, presumably we'll be talking about a proposed subcommittee structure. We've been batting it around for the last year,
Right.
and it's time for us to implement that, so.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll resend what I've originally sent out to the board, because I gave you a proposed structure already. I'll send that out, so then when we're at that meeting, we can do it. And we've had, at the time, we were dealing with so much people like, I don't know, we couldn't get really a lot of participants to want to do the subcommittee, but what I'm going to recommend is we absolutely need them. We have to figure out how to make it work, and if we have to look at when this board meets, the day and time, I think that would be a good time too, to maybe we can kind of replicate some of that too, because I know for some folks, Friday mornings works great, but a lot of you are telling me, please. So we'll deal with that again too. But yes, I'll send out what we sent out several months ago of the proposed structure and process of those subcommittees again.
Great. And I would ask all the board members to really seriously consider where you might be able to serve on one of those committees. The goal will be to break up some of the nuts and bolts that we deal with in this committee, have it dealt with in a subcommittee, and present a report to the full board. Okay, there's no old business that I'm aware of, so if that is not something for discussion, we'll move to the new business for the financial report. Amy? Well, let's first entertain a motion to approve the financial statement, which has been presented in your packet.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Amy?
Okay, so today we have year-to-date financial statement of activities through February 28th of 2025, which is period 5 of this fiscal year. Our total position currently stands at $1.04 million over budget. We did make an adjustment to our calculation of our intended target and pulled out the payroll so that that would be reporting based on a one pay period schedule, so like a 1/12, a traditional, since payroll is paid at a regular schedule. So it gives a better picture of the over/under budget where we are year to date for payroll, and then readjusted the target percentages for the remainder of the expenditures. Again, this is an aggressive schedule. We're hoping to identify overages earlier, and we're at a position, kind of, as I've said, we are anticipating a growing deficit, but there are some opportunities for revenue adjustments. We have the ABA rates adjustment that was just implemented, as Dr. Bashir's mentioned, and we'll hopefully be monitoring this and have continue at a moderate overage pace, and no sooner. And we are continuing conversations for revenue offsets as well within the region and beyond. So any specific questions or on the mental health fund?
I have a question for you. Are any of our grants SAMHSA grants?
We do have a number of SAMHSA grants, yes.
My understanding is there's a number of the SAMHSA grants have been put on hold. I know the drug court is primarily funded through that, and they're seriously concerned about their funding right now.
Yeah, I'm aware of that and keeping track of it. It's not clear the impact to what people are saying has happened and the impact on the grants, but I've already talked to the drug court last night because they brought that to my attention. He called me up and said, hey, but we're monitoring it closely. There were changes federally in terms of the number of employees that manage all of those, but we haven't yet received word that a specific SAMHSA grant is no longer there. I'm monitoring it closely though.
Great.
And just to remind, we have the huge system of care grant. We have some SAMHSA grants here all of those positions are, dependent on those grants. So if there's a change, then we'd have to look at the viability of maintaining those programs. And so we have a list that looks at grants and who's in them. And even the county asked us to provide a list of all grant positions and FTEs and what would happen if that grant went away. Most of the time, if the grant's gone, the position's gone, but sometimes you can find other funding sources to keep the thing going. So we're in the middle of that analysis. In fact, the administrator and HR department at the county asked for that. And I know you talked about SANSA, but for all grants, we're concerned about the impact.
Okay, and for millage and grants fund, we are at 50% or 49.76% spent to a target of 41.67. A lot of that is because our social rec programs and some of those one-time payments have already been made for the year, so we kind of catch up. If you recall, I think we've been at that 50% actual spend for the past couple months after we made those one-time payments. So we're, next month it'll kind of balance out and we'll be on schedule for achieving our budget for that fund. Assuming no changes to grants or other factors beyond our control. Okay, so we have the motion already for the financial statements, correct? So we're all set there. The other thing to present is a budget adjustment for a pass-through grant from the LRE from their opioid settlement funding to our SOBAR, Building Men for Life, for renovations to a facility in the area of $225,000.
Was that your?
$255,000.
Your attachment E on the opioid settlement?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was that attachment E?
Correct,
opioid
yeah,
settlement?
E1, and then there's the
Okay.
corresponding.
Entertain a motion to approve that budget adjustment.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Can I just go back a
Yep,
second to
sure.
something on the financial report?
Mhm.
So this is probably just me, but I have never been able to understand this.
Okay, yeah.
So is there a different way of,
Yes.
or explain it, or is
Yeah.
there's a different way of showing it to us? Because I'm clueless.
Yeah, that is a good way of looking at what percentage of a given service we directly operate or we contract out. So we'll
Okay.
come up with a different visual representation, but if that's the one you're looking at, that's the intention of that. And a lot of times people don't realize that a whole service category is contracted out, or a whole service category we directly operate with county employees. So we'll come up with a different visual
Okay.
and it's the service type and the percentage of that service type that we operate versus contractor. And it separates CMHs from other systems where the CMHs do directly operate services. It's one of the reasons why the state required, with the Medicaid stuff, someone to manage the Medicaid, so there wouldn't be a conflict of interest. But we'll get better visuals on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even that explanation was helpful.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we'll say something and Amy will go, oh yeah, I'll come up with this. Or she has it already. I'm like, that's what we want. And if we look at it, we're like, makes perfect sense. Right? Like, wow, look at
Well,
all that
the
yellow.
font, it's not great, the font is tiny and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Get a better
so-
way of doing it.
great for us, orange for contractors.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is a good way of knowing, like, Ottawa County employees are doing 90% of this thing, versus so like residential services are all contracted out, right? Some CMHs still directly operate some, very few, but so we'll get better at that.
Okay, and maybe just a different label, because now I
Yeah.
understand it, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, was there any further discussion or any questions about the opioid settlement budget adjustment? Okay, thank you, Amy. And Michael has his amended and renewed service contracts to present.
So before we go that, I just want to let the board know and the public know that I believe tomorrow's your birthday,
Yes,
Chairman Byrd.
a monumental event.
That's right. And so I want on behalf of our staff and the board, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You know, we're not going to sing happy birthday, but happy birthday.
We could.
Be an octogenarian.
That's right. Yes, it's a big date. You know, I won't self-disclose how old you're being unless you are, but I will tell you, you look great.
Thank you.
Yes.
And actually, while we're talking about that, thank you so much all for your expressions of sympathy and concern for the difficult last month or two that my family has gone through. And we're in the business of mental health and supporting one another, and it's been appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. First thing I'm going to look at is the amended attachment F. And besides items 1 and 2, the rest of those and that whole group are the result of the aforementioned autism rate increase. And one of the things that we'll talk about in the finance subcommittee, once it gets stood up, is what we have to bring to the board when there's an amendment, if it, you know, and what range of impact if it's a dollar amount over a certain amount. Like I know the regional entity, the CEO is allowed to kind of proceed if it's under 100,000 or whatever it is. I mean, this is one of those things where you could have just a change in the rate and it impacts 30 contracts. So items 3 through 18 is exactly that scenario. And so every one of those is just reflecting the change we have to make in the contract. And we will have to determine if the additional revenue that we receive from the state through the regional entity is adequate to cover the rate increase for these providers. And we will only know that based on utilization data. So we need some time to collect that. No one really did a calculation at the state level of trending utilization to determine what they need, by the way. Shocked? So what happened was they just passed a rule. What is the hourly rate? I forget. How much we have to pay now? We have to now pay $61. Is it 66? $66. You know, it's a pretty significant increase from what it was before. And if you generally, and so I always say, why this service? Why do that for all services? Right? And so I intend to use their strategy of looking at one particular population and saying, let's increase the rate there. That's exactly what I intend to do with specialized residential at the state level and say, gee, what do you need there? Are you giving us enough money for that? But that's what those are. The other ones that are on here, one was just to put back on our books a maximum healthcare services. We very seldomly use it, but sometimes we have to refer private duty nursing to some of our folks. It's usually done through the health plans. And so we have a contract that hasn't been revised and looked at for quite a long time that I wanted to amend. And you can notice it's item 1 on the attachment F. We're only estimating like 2 people. And it's fee for service and less than 50,000. But we haven't adjusted the rate for this provider to even close to what the Medicaid rate is for private duty nursing when we in small cases do that. So that's what that one is. The second one is a trend that you're going to see that I've built into our new proposed residential rate structure, which I showed last month, which I'll bring back again, where we have a large portion of folks that from time to time require one-to-one services in a home or in a residential home. And one-to-one means that somebody has to be like glue to them because of a health and safety need or extremely high behavioral and physical health needs. We estimate with the current number one-to-ones that are asked for in our system, if you annualize that, and I gave you a report last time we met, it's about $1 million. So a lot of times, someone just needs some extra supervision and they don't have enough staff to kind of have it on there. And they may not need that one-to-one glue, like you're glued to them, but someone like, we need an extra person to keep an eye on Amanda because you have to keep an eye on Amanda, you know, in a different and have enough staffing. So I rather have an increase in the staffing ratio than authorizing one-to-one care that can cost $500 to $600 a day. Just to have, so what this is doing is looking at that particular home and saying, let's get you, instead of a one person to every three person, let's have one staff member for every two, so that we don't have to have a one-to-one staff around the clock for one or two people that cost 3 times as much. And so we're looking at that with residential providers, giving them more flexibility, the amount of people, without asking for a one-to-one. And so that's what that's reflecting in there. So if you read the explanation, like, what in the world are they talking about? That's what it's intended to do, is to give providers flexibility to increase staffing temporarily without formally having to get a one-to-one glue around the clock at 3 times the cost. And we'll do some analysis of how effective it is. But it's a way to give more flexibility for staffing without overly utilizing one. We had some people asking for a one-to-one because they just needed an extra person, extra pair of eyes, because they're worried about health and safety for a couple of people. And that's just too costly of a situation. I have met with the majority of the specialized residential providers. We've come up with the criteria of one-to-one and a process of how you request it. And we have an operational guideline that will be finalized this month and sent out for everybody to look at on that. So this contract's one of trying to address that in real time instead of saying, yeah, let's have this one-to-one be on. And then like 2 weeks later, we've spent 3 times as much money. Things like that. Yes.
So I might be reading this wrong, but at the bottom it says estimated annual utilization for clients.
It's the number of people in the home. So it's to allow that we're serving, to allow the flexibility of the staffing for, that's the person in that specific home. So that's the number of people being served in that home.
Sure. And I might just be off on the scale of numbers here, but we're looking at over $750,000 for.
Each
staff.
residential placement costs about $140,000 that we have. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
750,000 is more than
Yeah,
140,000 times 4.
yeah, right. So that's the risk threshold, right? And so we're getting better at determining what that is. So like that level of care may have up to, if you had one-to-ones and stuff like that, up to that amount. We have some clients that cost us $300,000 a year in residential care because they need somebody with them most of the time. So it's my belief that we just didn't adequately adjust this threshold number to reflect the request in here, because that would be an actual threshold number if everybody, like if people were getting one-to-one in that home, which was the very reason why we wanted to adjust the rate for staffing and not pay for that. So I'll go back and double check that number on the threshold to see if it's accurate. I don't like thresholds, by the way. I like actual utilizations, but because we don't budget in our ledger the threshold number.
Sure.
You know, I wish we did, but we couldn't. We'd be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the math.
No, I understand. And I'm saying, yeah, it's probably not an accurate number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we've faced on these service contracts as we're approving them, is these threshold numbers are very,
Yeah, huge range.
they're just a huge range, and they're not actual costs. So anyways, it's just kind of difficult to determine.
So we've heard from providers that there's a dearth of staffing to begin with.
Mhm.
And so when I look at like how to increase staff temporarily,
Sure.
when I hear that, I translate that to overtime. We're
Correct.
going to put more on the existing staff that might be shorthanded to cover that one-to-one need.
Correct.
So, do you see this as going forward? I mean, I'd be more interested in seeing how that works as far as the specialized residential houses reporting back as far as how much extra, it's
Yep.
good as a cost saving measure, but if it's putting undue pressure on an already overtaxed staff,
Sure.
it might be better to revert.
Correct. And so the relationship between staff availability, one-to-one, overtime, and adjustments in staffing ratios are exactly what you're describing. So like the ability for us to know the impact of that is going to be huge. What providers tell us, it's easier for them to kind of schedule out and have more flexibility with the rate we give them to have more people on than it is to find the one-to-one staff to come in, an official one-to-one to do that.
True.
It's more difficult for
And,
them.
and as the rate increases, incorporate themselves into the system,
Yes.
hopefully that staffing issue will find
Correct.
some resolution. Okay.
Yeah, and I will remind this board that the rate of pay for direct care workers in all settings has changed dramatically. It's gone up and still not adequate. So in some cases, there's been a 200% increase in staff expenditures based on the rate of pay because keeping up with inflation, and it's still not adequate. But yes, we're hoping that what you're saying is the live experience of the provider to have more flexibility. And that threshold question has been one that's been there forever, and we might as well just get rid of the category and just put actual projected, right? But we're trying to figure out like the footprint of certain services of what the potential worst case scenario should be. And all that seems to do is increase anxiety and me double check the number. So we'll look at that.
It would even be nice if you could put like a projected estimate or
Yeah,
something
we
like
have that in one of the columns, but
Yeah.
it's, as you know, this has grown since I've been here, the number of columns. And we're almost getting there.
Right.
Hence the first task of the finance subcommittee. So those are the amended contracts. So I don't know if you vote on those separately and then we get to new contracts. I think that's what we've been doing. Like the consent for the amended first, and then we get to the new ones. So I think someone has to make a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion
I think it
respond.
requires a roll call vote because there's a significant dollar amount. I wish it didn't, but
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
okay, the next set are new contracts. And the way to interpret this is items 6 through 14, I believe, yeah, are new RFP awards. I kind of covered this generally last time we were there. I'd like to start with those and then move back up to the other ones. As you know, we did a one-time funding RFP award for millage surplus. We authorized beginning of this year. And that was after we already had approved millage awards for the social rec programs and others at the beginning of the year. This was the supplemental dollars the surplus dollars that I wanted to utilize for strategic purposes for one-time funding. When you look over the different kind of providers we have, I tried to have a balance with our process. We had over 20-something people apply. All of them were worthy for millage funding, but I was very specific in trying to pick certain characteristics for these millage award for this particular time. And I talked about this last time, but I'll go over it again. The criteria I was using is, is there a balance of different offerings, millage offerings? So it's not all social rec or all this. Does it expand the mental health services network out to, say, moderate populations, and then possibly set them up in the future to be part of our CCBHC funding stream, which would allow these providers to not have to rely on millage, but the CCBHC funding stream as a designated care organization or DCO or kind of subcontractor. So a lot of these awards were to stand up organizations that we've had millages before to provide mental health services and services for our recipients, substance abuse, for moderate populations, to stand them up with millage to convert them to CCBHC funding or not. So they're not intended to be permanent forever millage renewals. And so those are the contracts that focus on mental health expansion. We have some that offer different types of social recreation and other things, in addition to the ones we have. That would be items, Tri-City, the Family YMCA, is that they're going to open up their whole kind of service array for specific programming for folks, for us to get reimbursed by us if they go half a day or a full day, based on the numbers, to have a very robust service offering for folks with developmental disabilities, substance use, mental health. It's not just what they offer at the Y. It's that and adding extra staff and training to be educated on how to integrate folks with different abilities into the Y. And so I'm very proud of that kind of thing. It gives some options in that area of the county and others to get to, and are going to provide that. It's the same thing with Vita Counseling that's going to have some social rec opportunities and therapy programs and family education sessions for folks that are Spanish speaking in Holland, but it can be made available there. We extended the mental health capacity through Beacon of Hope and Mosaic Counseling and City on the Hill, which will provide comprehensive mental health services for the moderate population that we don't serve with Medicaid. So none of these contracts are meant to replicate or supplant a Medicaid service. It keeps the community in community mental health by looking beyond Medicaid. We awarded this go around something to Harmony Homes that allows for an RA model for supportive independent living in regular apartments. So folks with autism that are not in our system, that maybe should be, but maybe are not, are able to have an apartment and down the hall there's an RA that's checking on them, not doing personal care and CLS, providing oversight and support. We're happy to fund that. That's an innovative housing approach that we'd like to see duplicate. And this board told me to look into it. So we have to look at alternative ways to expand out things that we don't offer and things that we do to different populations with millage dollars. This reflects over a $1.1 million investment for community mental health to keep community in community mental health. If not, we're just a Medicaid plan. That's not why I'm working here. It's not why we're here. So, Michael, you have all these funding problems with Medicaid. Yes, I know. There's a deficit there and we're addressing it as the best we can. That is separate from the millage situation. The taxpayers made it very clear, do not supplant Medicaid services with millage dollars. Now, we can help with some cost associated to some of that, and we're looking at that. But these programs that are listed here are well-balanced in terms of social rec, expanding therapy, addressing housing options, and it's just the beginning of what we can do. Now, we were also featured in a statewide kind of article with counties that have a millage. We were the first one. There's like 3 or 4 other ones. I sent that link out. I'll make it available to the public. I sent it to staff that kind of highlight the need for millage. We need millage because the state general fund system for mental health has failed. We are doing things that we used to do 20 years ago with state general fund mental health dollars. Because of that and our dependence on Medicaid, if we didn't have millage, we could offer nothing more than millage, Medicaid services and crisis services with general fund. So these programs are a way to reach out to the community. You'll notice that none of these things are to enhance things within our already CMH system. It's to expand out and to set up some of these providers to get CCBHC funding that would make it a permanent funding stream for them to reach out to those moderate populations. So that's why the list looks like it is. And last time we were here, I even gave you another document that came to give more detail. And so I'll take any questions on the millage programs first that you have on these contracts. If you have any, I'll take them now.
I just have a comment, and that's that I appreciate, I I appreciate the outreach and the expansion beyond Medicaid because Medicaid recipients are not the only people who
Darn
need
right.
services. So I appreciate that.
The other contracts that are listed on there, one is to expand our residential capacity. That's Marie Angel AFC. And the other one is Soul Spring. It's the same idea. There's a new kind of home up there and we're looking at it. And it's tough because I have to be very careful. As we expand our residential network, we have need to put people in them. So it's this balance on the residential side of how many people are in urgent need of residential and what our capacity is. And we have several processes to kind of examine that. So it's not an easy thing to kind of expand the network. So if you're a provider, it's like, are you going to put anybody in it? If not, why do I have the home open? So when it says expand the network on there, that is true. But we have a robust residential services utilization management committee that meets every month to go over who needs to be in placement, how we made that decision, how do we make that call, what the rate should be. And we've been doing it for several months now, and it's getting better and better. But I will bring in one of my reports, how that committee's functioning, what we're looking at, and examples of that. So you can see that we've significantly increased our utilization management and review of residential services. We cannot prevent needed residential services, but we have to do a better job, and we are, of identifying who they are. There's easily 50 people in our county that could benefit from it. And there's easily 5 to 10 that we need to find placements for. Well, every 5 to 10 more than we have budgeted over 3% can cost us close to $1 million in new expenditures. So this is what I'm sending to the region, of showing them our work and evaluating this so they're aware of the issue. So I'm not just putting these on here willy-nilly, like, oh, we'll just increase it. We're keeping our eye on the dollar amounts, the utilization very closely. But as this board knows, we cannot deny service based on revenue. If I don't have the money, I still have to provide the service. And that's why that gap analysis is continuously needed. We don't have enough Medicaid revenue coming in to meet the Medicaid obligations that we've signed up for. And I intend to keep publicizing that and find ways to address that. It takes some time. But if you've been on the board a while since I've been here, Michael, we did this before. We approved all these residential contracts that said capacity building, and lo and behold, they're full. Yeah, I know. So I'll show this board the process we utilize in our utilization management process for residential services, and we'll end up having eventually one of those community dialogues on that, so people get that as well. But that's what those are about. And I know in the past, I've been kind of hesitant just to have things on for capacity only, but we tend to use them. So, but that's kind of the new contracts, millage versus those ones.
Any further discussion on the contracts before we vote on them? And we'll entertain a motion for approval,
So moved.
Second.
and it's roll call.
Yes.
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 Mr. Byrd.
Yes, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is appointment of a nominating committee. We do have our organizational meeting for the next term coming up next month. Actually, I neglected to recognize we have 2 new board members who recently joined us. Peg Flackler is here today. Peg has 30 years of experience as an advocate for the DD community here in Ottawa County. She's well-known, and we appreciate having her on the board. Welcome. And Jordan, who stepped out started last month with his first meeting. I was not here and didn't have a chance to welcome him then. But next month, we will have two new board members. Vonnie Vanderswag, who again has served on this board for many years, will be back with us. And then Paul Duff has newly been appointed. Welcome. You have about 17 years with the PIHP, is that correct?
Yeah, probably so.
Yep, good. Well, welcome. We welcome your wisdom to impart to us. But with that said, we will have an election for the board officers next month, and I'd like to seek board approval to have a nominating committee, which I will convene to present a proposed slate of officers. So if someone would like to move authorization for that.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, and then motion carries. And if anyone is interested in serving on the nominating committee, let me know, and we'll try to have a meeting to come up with that proposed slate for the next meeting. Any other general information, comments, or meetings attended that? Then we have another opportunity for public comment. Again, if anyone would like to speak to any of the issues we've discussed or anything on your mind, please present yourself.
Peg Driesinga, Allendale, Michigan. Here from Harbor House Ministries. I promise I'm not going to talk about rates again, but I do appreciate obviously the effort to get us back out of drowning. But I wanted to speak a little bit to the needs assessment, and it's been something that has been in my 20 years in this work, something that has often been talked about as how it could be more useful on all sides of the equation. And I would just encourage this board to really push on that, because it isn't just the social determinants and that sort of thing, but it is the needs that are coming down the pike and building the capacity, because right now we are in a situation, and as I'm sure all of you are aware, of many families facing needs, whether it's for residential service or other services, whether they're in the Medicaid system or not, and there's just not the capacity that's needed. And what the needs assessment was originally designed for was to anticipate that and anticipate the needs and the growing needs, et cetera. And I would also just encourage, historically, the satisfaction surveys are always put out. They haven't always had a great return rate. And I think as a business, we understand that happens as well. Most of the time when you hear about satisfaction from anybody, it's a conversation. So I would just encourage CMH to use the person-centered planning process and look at aggregating some of that data, whether it's numeric or whatever, into the satisfaction data, because it is also an opportunity to illuminate the person-centered process. What is working for me? What do I need? All of that kind of thing. Thank you.
Rosalie Austin, I wonder where the FSR is, the bucket report that compares each county in the region financially. What happened to that? And yeah, the survey should be digital. Like every time you go to Spectrum Health, they text you a survey. What happened today? How did you like it? What can we do better? What didn't you like? Is that something that Otto can do in the future? And yeah, thanks.
My name's Kyle Thompson. I reside in Zeeland Township, and I am here representing Beacon of Hope in the city of Holland. And our organization was recently selected to receive some millage funding. And I just want to say, Dr. Bashirs, I just am really impressed with your passion for community To be able to be an organization in the community, to be able to continue to help the non-Medicaid moderate people who really need assistance means a lot. In December, prior to realizing that we were going to even get this funding, our wait list, because we have a wait list, was reaching upwards of 6 to 9, maybe even 10 weeks. And that's just way too high, absolutely way too high. But this funding is going to basically eliminate any type of wait list because we'll be able to use it towards our staffing and our internship program. And just want to say thank you because people are going to get help that are underinsured or they have no insurance. And because that's who we're serving. So thank you.
Can you tell the board, I'm setting them up for this, how much it costs people to receive your services?
We've been doing this for 23 years and we do not charge any fees. So anybody can come to our organization and receive master level state license counseling and it doesn't cost them more.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I just wanted to thank you for coming up and saying that, just like the previous lady did, because when I look at these contracts, it's just paper to me, and I'm trying to look into things. So to hear you and your passion for what you do, and I just appreciate that.
Hello, Dawn Nordike. I live in Holland. I am representing Heritage Homes. We work throughout the county. I have all sorts of notes scribbled throughout this meeting, but I'm going to just speak from my heart for a moment. I'd like to make sure that you do look at attachment A and B in your packet. I was on the Provider Alliance meeting on Monday for the CMHA, of which my organization's been part of the Provider Alliance for a couple of decades. It was the first time that I saw tears in the eyes of people who have worked in either the nonprofit sector or along as part of CMHA, who had prior provider service experience and are now working on behalf of furthering community mental health across the state. Literally tears in our eyes that this system may disappear within the next 2 years. I've been working in the system for 37 years. I've never seen it in this disarray. And it starts at the federal level. Please, please advocate as hard as possible, everybody in the room, regarding Medicaid and the dismantling that's happening at this point. And then, of course, all politics are local. I want to thank Michael, the staff at CMH for the incredible work that has been done in the 27 years that I've worked in Ottawa County. And it is incredible. It's among the best in the state. And I work on the other side of the fence in another state where I was on the CMH side. And I would challenge any county anywhere to surpass the services that are delivered here. I'd like to mention, I know that eyebrows go up at the cost of care. We are serving the people who wouldn't have survived when I started in this field. We are serving people who are so medically fragile or have behavioral challenges that very often hours and hours a day are provided one-to-one care, if not 24 hours a day, one-to-one care. And I find it ironic at a point where we're losing funding that we're also being challenged by the final rule from CMS. And as it trickles down to us and our region, that our need to provide services that I fully support such as getting people out in the community more, and it's written into the individual plans of services to get people out more. And we have made our staffing patterns more robust in order to accomplish that, because it's one-to-one needs very often to get people out to meet that, that plan of service. We haven't had a cost of living increase. Our increase for our staff's insurance is 18.5%. 18% at the county level, I heard, well, we'll just have to make an adjustment. How do we make an adjustment? So while I'm really, really glad to see the rate structures and the work that's being done to hopefully bring in more funding for next year, how do we survive this year? We're managing our overtime the best we can. We're hiring as aggressively as we can while it's still difficult to hire. But I'm starting to see, look at the MIT cost of living or living wage calculator right now we're below it. I can say for almost every provider, even if it's a single person, add that they have one child, which is at minimum most of our demographic, we're paying substantially below living wages. We're going to start imploding because employees are going to need to pay bills and start going to factories. So this implosion is going to happen if we don't make changes sooner than next year. So thank you for the work you do. I know it's a very difficult job, and you're not paid in any capacity. Your hearts are as big as mine, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We have one person online.
Hello, Mike.
Hey.
Perfect.
Are you there, David?
Yes. I have to hang up on my phone. My name is Dave Barnowski and I vote in Port Sheldon Township. And of course, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I wanted to chime in this week and prove that the messaging in works this time, and to express my appreciation for Christopher Kleingens in what is likely to be his last meeting. Since I'm not able to be there, I wanted the people in the room to do what I could not, and to express your appreciation for his serving too, and to slightly embarrass him before he leaves. So if you could do that for me, I'd appreciate it. He served and has offered to serve again, but was voted out. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
You don't know how to end.
And we have two other individuals online? No? Okay. All right, with that, we will adjourn our meeting and look forward to meeting you all again in a month. Thank you.